Sajid to share his experience. Sajid, if maybe you may want to use a presentation, share the wealth of knowledge that you have and amazing amount of customers that you've been working with, what kind of challenges that you foresee, lessons learned during the course of working closely with some of the large Fortune 500 customers around the world. So hand off to you. I'll hand it over to you and we'll come back.
Thank you, Kundan. Yes, I'll use a presentation and do let me know once my screen is visible to everyone. So share my screen here and here's my presentation. I hope everybody is able to see the screen now.
It's visible.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Martin. So National Preparedness Month. Now, why we actually choose to do this is mostly in the West, preparedness is taken very seriously. And we are serving our customers globally. And we believe that creating that awareness and being part of the National Preparedness Month, which is getting observed in Canada, is a good way of forwarding the awareness to our clients across the globe on the preparedness for organizations to face disruptions like the one that we just faced with pandemic. Now, what is preparedness? This is something that will just take you through something very brief. You see my slide, right? My slide has changed. Martin, can you confirm?
Yes,
Confirmed.
Sajid.
You're good with the flow.
All right, so let's see preparedness, right? Preparedness for individuals, for national organizations, is actually means it's a cycle, it's a planning cycle, which starts with planning, then organizing, training, equipping, exercising, evaluating, and taking corrective action. Now, whatever preparation that you want to do, preparedness regarding your business, regarding your personal life, regarding your responses for cities, for countries, for essential service, all have a very similar cycle. The subject of preparedness has been something that we have been practicing for years, but the importance of preparedness in the context of a pandemic, in the context of the climate change that we are facing today, the kind of cyber attacks, technology challenges that we've done has increased. And it is very important that we actually get this basic awareness about preparedness across all of our organizations so that we exactly know the steps that is required to be done. Now, making arrangements. The second step is once you have done the planning, and the thing is making those arrangements, having the readiness to be able to use those preparedness that you have done to be able to respond to your different situation, creating and testing those plans, training the people, educating, sharing the information is always part of the preparedness. The one very critical component about all your preparedness that you would do for any part of your life, be it your organizations or personal life, is to create the awareness about those preparations of disaster and emergencies and unexpected situations with the stakeholders. Now, National Preparedness Month is observed each September in Canada to raise the awareness about the importance of preparedness for disaster and emergency that could happen anytime. Now, this is one good practice that we believe that we need to spread the awareness across the globe, especially in some of the regions that we are very much working with. A lot of our clients, be it Middle East, Asia, Southeast Asia. I think in this region, the awareness about preparedness is something that can be improved, and we are making an effort, given that we service our clients, help them in the area of risk and resilience, that we believe that this concept should be something that we should create the awareness and pass the message of the importance of this preparedness. Now, preparedness, the cycle is very simple. There are 4 phases of preparedness. The first thing is, how do you prevent things from happening which are negative? For example, any disruptions, any unforeseen negative developments. The first thing that you should do about any preparedness is prevention. So all the actions that you can do to prevent something bad happening to your organization, individual, essential service is the first kind of preparedness. However, if prevention cannot stop an incident or a disruption from happening, we should have a plan to respond to it. How will you respond to it? Who will take that ownership? How will the communication happen? All of these comes under response. Once you have done the initial response, the plan, how will you recover from that situation? The world is still recovering from pandemic. How would we recover from that? How would we go back to the BAU or the new normal that we call it? That is called recovery. And then from there on, ensuring that we mitigate those scenarios or the adverse impact that has happened and ensure that those things are prevented from happening again or having the same kind of impact. These are very simple 4 phases of preparedness. Now, the components of your preparedness cycle will include a plan. Every preparedness needs to start with a plan. What is your plan on preparedness? Then you would organize the requirements, like organize the equipments, organize the technology, the people, whatever is required, you will get it organized. Then train people. Once you've trained people, exercise those plans. See whether those are fit for purpose, and then evaluate and improve. Very basic things. Now, all of these will sound very similar, especially to people who are from the business continuity domain, or as we call that today, the world is moving through resilience, the resilience practice. Organization, when you say preparedness, if you are failing to prepare, then you're preparing to fail. And this is very much true for organizations. And the organizations, when they talk about preparedness, the subject is business continuity management. And that's why you would see this similar about the preparedness to what you do in your PDCA cycle for ISO 22301. It is a plan, do, check, act, and then continuous improvement. Very simple practice of business continuity. Surprisingly, a lot of organizations never had this subject or the team to manage business continuity. And even if it was there, it was very manual or immature. In fact, in other words, it was not fit for purpose. It was not adequate to the requirements of those organizations. And a lot of those organizations have paid heavy price because of what they face in this disruption of pandemic. The world will actually continue to have disruptions. It has become a reality. We have adverse weathers. We've just recently seen so many incidents, from what we've seen, the flooding in Pakistan, to the power outage that we have seen in Muscat, to the heavy rains, which probably brought the entire BPO industry of Bangalore, India, out of service for a day. This is something that can be avoided. This is something that can be prepared and responded through business continuity management or business resilience. Now, how do you implement that? Is through a BCM life cycle. We help organization implement business resilience in various geographies. And since we are specialized in business resilience, risk and resilience, here I have listed down the high level steps, and each of those steps, the challenges, we have been able to provide solutions to organizations. And just to share, some of them have been very successful stories. In fact, the best recovery of the year during pandemic or people getting global awards have been some organizations which have partnered with us. We have specialized in helping organizations develop the entire business resilience practice. And why would an organization do it? Very simple thing. First of all, without having a business resilience practice today, the entire survivability of the organization is at stake. The valuation of the organization goes down without having a business resilience practice or business continuity plans. Secondly, how do you assure your clients of today, your customers, the importance that your stakeholder will have confidence in you depends on the maturity of your business resilience. Your customers will be guaranteed the continuity of their services and product. Your stakeholders or your shareholders or your investors would be comfortable understanding that their investments are being taken care of. And most importantly, your employees will be assured of the business's continue, the organization surviving, and they continuing to have those services and continue to deliver to their clients. How do you do that? All of that is through this high level 6 steps. The first one, any practice that you want to implement in the business, in the organization, has to be with the program management, top management commitment. Now, when you do not have your senior management on board on implementing anything, it is bound to fail. So that's the step 1. And here we help organizations understand the need of business continuity management and resilience. And believe me, it's not a cost to the organization. It's an investment which actually multiplies the return to organizations. Not doing a business continuity is actually putting up more cost and impact on the organization. And to do that, we specialize in understanding the organization. That's the first step. Each organization is in some form different from others. The basic rule remains the same, but then understanding the organization is key to developing a plan which is very unique to it. This is where we can help organization if they want, depending on what is the best methodologies or framework which they would need. Determining the BCM strategies is the next step. Once you understand the organization, what strategy is best for each organization is something which is the next step. The strategy could be a tactical one, could be a strategical level, could be detailing. There are various maturities of BCMS that is adequate for different organizations. Once you have your high level strategy ready, then you comes to implementing the Bcm response. That is where you would define the roles and responsibilities. That is where you would create the framework. You will have the interlink, the workflow, the entire process would be defined, and those will be then put it into a documented form where people will be trained on it. Then what you do is exercise those. No plans are perfect till it's exercised. With exercising, if you are able to understand and validate it's fit for purpose, it's the best confidence that senior management, customers, stakeholders, and employees have on those plans. And to maintain that, review it periodically, and the most important thing is embedding that BCM culture in the organization. Resilience, without that culture of resilience in the organization, will fail. You may have best of plans, but if the organization doesn't develop that culture of taking the importance of resilience, it is bound to fail. That is what the BCM life cycle. We specialize in organizations to do this. And one of the biggest reasons why the world has now seen the importance of it is the evidence is through the regulations which has come up. Organizations are now mandated to have business continuity practice in their organization, either through regulations or legislations. And this is where it has become a top management priority in developing that practices. Now, to do that, we actually offer our services in helping organization starting from scratch, developing it for them, getting into the automation and maintaining it as well. That is business continuity lifecycle for us. Coming to the three parts. Now, when you have a business continuity practice and you do not automate that, is actually some way that you're not realizing the benefit of business continuity. We tell you very simply, there are multiple reasons why you should do an automated business continuity planning. The first one is it will actually reduce your cost of implementing a very matured business continuity management. Secondly, automation will help you avoid all the human errors. It will help you identify the gaps, and it can validate your plans fit for purpose. And the third and most, it will actually reduce your downtime, reduce the duration of disruption, because automation will actually take away a lot of your manual activities. The system can perform for you. At the same time, it can give you the information and help you respond to a crisis better. There are three big components of automating business continuity planning in any organization. One is people, second is technology, and third is process. And we help define each of them for any organization. If you want to know more about it, we have a complete resilience platform, which is called Auto BCM, and we are ready to help and assist organizations in building this resilience platform. Thank you so much. For more information, you guys can contact on this. So
Thank you,
this,
Sajid. Thank you, Sajid. I think it was very, very informative. And, somebody like you yourself, with a very senior person, having working with the regulators at different industries and working with the C-level people, I assume there are a few people who joined in. We have a good amount of, participants and attendees here. I would want you to share a little bit of your background in the space, what your journey has been like as BCM practitioners, and over the years, since you've been working with a lot of large customers at a C-level, how do you, come to terms and giving them what is an ideal, what should a BCM, head of BCM or a practitioner should look out in enabling a journey of an organization? And it's kind of a more curious question to yourself, specifically given your background and experience, before we move on to something else. So if you can try and address that.
Thank you, Kundan. See, first of all, before pandemic, there was a lot of effort in trying to understand and explain to senior management the need of it. That's no more the case. People have today realized that they need to adopt business continuity. Now, that has somehow made our job easier for us to implement business resilience in organization. But what actually happens is a lot of people still take this as a cost when they don't realize that this is actually will bring the lean benefit to an organization for very simple reasons. The first of all, your customer services will go up. Your customers will be able to meet, you'll be able to continue your services and products to your customers. Secondly, and the most important thing, regulations. Today, it is mandated across senior geographies that we have worked, where it is mandated to have business continuity management practice for essential service at least. And now that it is mandated, it is obligation on senior management to implement that. The problem that we have faced, the problem that organization face when they come to us is they do not know how to do it. And that was one of these cases when few years back, when we went on a journey with one of our clients, they actually did not have an idea on how to implement that. And then we helped them design the framework, bring in the automation, and we're happy to share that they got one of the best recoveries of the year award during pandemic. Now, why would this happen is, the first of all, there are 2-3 big reasons why people should adopt business continuity resilience practice. The first one is they guarantee the services to the customers. And this is where the survivability of the organization is there. This is where the valuation of the organizations are there. Secondly, not doing a business continuity and through automation is actually increasing the cost. Automation across any practices have proven to reduce the cost of implementing it in any organization. Manually, whenever you do it, you at least need double the staff to do the same kind of activity. And the most important reason is mandated, because the regulators want you to do it. And if people do not know how to implement it, it's a simple journey. It's just that if people reach out to us, we'll be able to explain them on how easily it is to implement business resilience practice. And this could be done in few months in any organization.
Thank you, Sajid. I hope people on the call, attendees, are able to get some value out of the conversation and experience shared by the team in here. Martin, I'll move on to you with a question. And given your background, maybe talk a little bit about your background and industry experience. You kind of understand the North American and the preparedness month that we're talking about here in Canada today and this month. You've been a consultant, you have been a practitioner, and now you're seeing what happens in Asia and the Middle East, the different trends in here. How can organizations identify the business threats and the weak failure points? And maybe try and give it a layman perspective to people who joined in on with us on the call today, as well as a practitioner's view to that. Maybe, and somebody else can also give his perspective. Martin, I'll first go with you and get your perspective, and then move on to maybe Shashi as well.
Sure, and I'll break down the answer in 2 sections. So the first question was around, how do you identify business threats? And the second one was around how do you also identify weak points of failure? So in thinking about how to identify business threats, one of the most important aspects is really identifying business threats is really to conduct a threat risk assessment, but you should also not be limited to just conducting a single threat assessment in order to truly understand what kind of threats your organization is exposed to. So in thinking about how your organization works, you should also consider conducting other assessments such as business impact analysis, creating scenario-driven tabletops that are relevant to the threats that could impact your organization. So whether it be a cybersecurity threat or a loss of premise or a loss of people type situation, and then a plan validation exercise. Because no matter how many plans you do implement, you do need to validate that the plan itself works. And you do that through exercises, and that can range from work area recovery exercises, so having individuals move from one office to another or work from home, and also conducting a culture exercise. Now, I've worked for several organizations that have conducted culture exercises, whether it be through an automated tool, where at a click of a button, everyone gets a notification. But I've also worked with a lot of organizations where that culture exercise is very manual. So it starts off with a trigger from the business continuity team or leader and up to the executive, and then the executive cascades down a notification to all of their employees up until it reaches the most junior employee, advising them of what has actually transpired and what steps they need to do in order to continue working either at an alternate location or just to stand on standby depending on what the situation is. And in conducting all these activities, it can really help the organization validate what was documented, how the organization responds, recovers, and restores its operations. And throughout that entire validation exercise, while you are experiencing those situations, thankfully, it's hopefully within an exercise scenario, you're able to identify certain gaps, because when an incident actually happens, and I've responded many, and I've led a lot of incidences throughout the course of my career, nothing really technically goes according to plan, but having the right tools at the right time truly helps you recover and be a little bit more efficient in getting back to business, because you want to make sure your stakeholders, including your customers and your third-party suppliers and whoever else is dependent on your business, to be able to recover. And finally, the organization should also consider having some form of a crisis management process, whether it be with key stakeholders, having reoccurring meetings, and really just to drive home the message of, if you have specific key decision makers within the organization, regardless of the crisis, they will always get together and make the right decisions in order to recover the organization itself. And you can conduct things even such as workshops, invite third parties to those sessions. So that could be local law enforcement or fire officials to help really help them understand from an external perspective where the organization stands, and then also help them with their advice as to how to best suit your organization to be fit for purpose whenever an incident actually occurs. Now, for the weak points of failure, so exercises and plan validations, yeah, they're considered as some of the most appropriate processes a business can conduct to identify these, but also sharing with employees at all levels. So you have your plans, you have your exercises, but sharing that information from a communications perspective and having them participate in those exercises could really strengthen the collective knowledge in how to best respond during disruptive events. I'm not going to get into too much details as what you should communicate to staff, how you should communicate it, but something to really take away from this key point is communication and reiteration of the processes that everyone needs to be aware of, so that they're aware of what their responsibilities are, whether it be the CEO all the way down to the junior employee. That reiteration of communication is critical, because one day it might not happen, the incident might not happen one day, it might not happen a year, it might not happen 2 or 3 years from now, but then you have the COVID-19 come in and disrupt everything, and you don't want everyone scratching their head as to what it is that they need to do. So reiteration, communication of what their responsibilities are, even if it's something as simple as creating graphical posters, videos on the intranet site. I've created videos in my past roles in consulting where it was just animated videos where an incident was presented, and thereafter you would be able to kind of go through a story of what is expected of that employee who's viewing that video, of what their response should be. And so thinking about an intranet site, if you don't have an intranet site, think of a local SharePoint site or a shared drive in which you're able to house your communication materials for staff to be able to pull and be able to be aware of what kind of policies and procedures of what to expect during an emergency. And, finally, considering the health and safety aspects, such as what you do in emergencies, having individuals trained in CPR and other ways to preserve life during emergencies can truly help significantly understand additional weak points of failure. And that's mainly my flavor from addressing this question. And I know, Sashi, if there's anything you would like to add, or anybody else, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Martin. While we go to Shashi, I'll probably add on to the question for Shashi, given his, the local reach out, and to the extent the way he communicates with customers across the region, reaching out from Africa and Middle East. When you talk about crisis management, you touched upon on some of the very important elements, saying notification, right? We need to inform people, whether it's employees and partners or regulators, people need to be informed on time there is a crisis. But, that's just one part of it. What happens when they are informed, but nobody can act on do anything about it? Or how do you ensure that people are not just notified, but then there is an action to that? When, back in the days pre-pandemic, BCM was BCM, which is business continuity management. Today, it is the world of resilience. You got to not just deal with, just not going to realize that you are in a situation, but have to come out of it at the fastest possible time in order to, stay back in the business. Otherwise, business is going to go south. So Shashi, over to you for additional comment, feedback. What do you think about it?
Sure. I think touching upon the first point, how do we identify the right risks for organizations? I would say industry has come up with different methodologies, and there is ISO 22301. Not every risk applies to every organization, right? So that's the reason why in the process of business continuity management and resilience program, you first identify what is critical to your business. Any risk, any incident that impacts your criticality, right? Critical processes, your financial outcome, may it be your reputation, that's a risk for you, right? So this is a systematic process that have been in the industry, revised itself, and now it's such a matured program. And one of the things I experienced is when customers use Auto BCM, they see this maturity in the tool, in identify the risk, in identifying the critical processes of the organization, identify financial impacts, different aspects of the organization that directly impact organization's outcome. That's the reason why when Sajid said, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? It all comes up with how well you prepare yourself in identifying what is critical for your business, what are the risks, how do you mitigate them, how do you plan to recover, right? All of this is inbuilt in a tool like Auto BCM, and that really helps in building any program, any business continuity program for an organization. And also touching upon the crisis management, you mentioned 3 months back, there was a fire accident in Al Sakar business tower. It's right next to DIFC. If anybody is joining from Dubai, 2 floors in Al Sakar tower, business tower, have been completely destroyed. Thank God, fortunately, there are no human losses, but what happened was one of my clients have been in that floor, and within 5 minutes, all the employees residing on those floors were notified that there is a fire accident and they need to evacuate the building, right? Within another 5 minutes, the senior management of this organization, this business, was able to pinpoint and identify who are the staff members still stuck in those floors and who are the staff members that were evacuated. And in the next 30 minutes, they were able to run the business continuity program and resume their critical operations and critical processes with to almost no financial loss to the business. That shows how important it is to plan and prepare for a business continuity program through a well-established methodology and a program like this, rather than to fail to prepare or fail to plan, right?
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you thank you for sharing all of that. We touched upon on the normalcy, returning to normalcy. Sajid, you mentioned, fastest recovery as at the smallest possible time frame. Pushkar, maybe I'll come to you. You work with customers and get their first-hand experience and the testimony, and what kind of challenges do you face throughout the course of the first touch point that you have. Returning to normalcy is a top of the priority for everybody. How do you think these BCM or a larger BCM program helps organizations in coming back to normalcy? This has maybe come from your experience of talking to the C-level people, organizations who really are concerned when coming to normalcy. It's not just about virtual to hybrid to an in-person coming back to office. Most part of the world has come back to work. There are industries which still is virtual or may decide to be on virtual just because that's how they want to function. But how do you see a BCM program helping organizations to come back to normalcy?
Thank you, Kundan. Excellent question, I would say. So, well, it's a new normal, right, that we are talking about, because of course, COVID was not the usual disruption that people face, and therefore, of course, returning to normalcy, everybody took their own time and different methodologies to get there. And imagine the criticality of what we call BAU, right, business as usual, returning to BAU. So ISO has a dedicated clause, right, for this practice, right? And it is as critical and as important as you're doing your business continuity planning, right? Like crisis management. Equally important is to also have a BAU plan, right? Which is far equally important, should be equally detailed out, and should have involvement of all key stakeholders to ensure that it is success. Now imagine when there is a IT disaster, right, and they move to DR, right? It's not that once the crisis is over and people can directly log into the production. No. So IT has to ensure that all the data has been transferred, production side is back up, and only then they allow people to log in, right? Otherwise, during this time when they are rolling back to production, all the data that is there will be lost. So I urge like all the participants, if they're not doing this kind of detailed planning, to please engage in that. Have that kind of detailing when you plan for returning to normalcy. Of course, we'll be more than happy to assist you as part of this exercise. And Martin, Sajid, you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, so the question is around how BCM program can provide support for returning to normalcy, quote unquote normalcy, post-crisis, right? In thinking about some of my experiences with a business continuity program in place, any organization that would need the help for the ability for an organization to overcome a crisis is a key element, but most organizations still fail to consider of what kind of support they need to provide to employees, customers, or other important stakeholders. So that, think of the human element if the crisis impacted their ability to work. And thinking about what immediate support employees would need, so mechanisms ranging from mental health support to trauma counseling, both for the impacted individuals who depend on the business to recover and the individuals who are responsible for the recovery of the business are very important aspects when thinking about crisis occurred and now what do we do after this crisis. And ideally, you'd also want to consider creating an effective after action report. And that can come in the form of a I don't want to call it a checklist, but something that really assesses the steps taken during that crisis and what key elements in post-crisis will require to be better suited to navigate a similar crisis in the future, and identify ways to truly mitigate against some of the, say, for example, extra processing that was conducted, the miscommunications that were conducted, and being able to have some form of a mechanism to track all of the actions that were actually conducted during the crisis would be very important. And yes, I'm going to plug, from an auto BCM perspective, and whenever you do launch your crisis management module, you would be able to actually track all of the actions performed for that actual crisis. And once it's over, it's really just getting everyone together who was responsible for the recovery of that organization and being able to identify ways to come back to normal, but also a stronger normal.
Thank you, Martin. Martin, you've been a practitioner being on the customer side, and Sajid yourself. This question, maybe a thought is more towards both of you. What is the foundation for a strong BCM program? We're seeing more customers not knowing what to do. In the moment, in today's time, BCM is a very newer space, and now on top of it, it's become resilient. So you have very limited professionals in the industry around the world. What would be the takeaways that you want to give out to people who joined on this, webinar, and talk about those foundation to a successful BCM program? At the same time, how do you smartly make them more effective business continuity planning or a management, as whatever you may want to call it there. So maybe Sajid, I'll start with you, over to you, and then to Martin.
Okay, so let me start by saying this. The one thing that everybody understands is the top management commitment, because anything which has to be implemented in an organization needs it. But now coming to the business continuity, I think there are two elements that we have seen people struggle with, where we have helped and made it effective. The first one is what kind of information to gather, where to start is very important. A lot of times, people have this basic life cycle being planned in ISO, BIR, ABCP testing, but a lot of that information actually is manually inputted, which actually leads to it not being used for analysis. When you're collecting information and not using it is actually the waste of effort which is spent in collecting that information. Today, we have seen organization creating 2,000, 3,000 documents of BIRA, BCP, and testing records, but without doing any analysis and understanding any interrelationship and identifying the gaps. So having what information is one thing, and to do, analyze those data and use that data. BCM is one subject which has all the information about the organization, but when people practice that manually, it actually is waste in a way, because they are not able to do analysis and report of it. For example, you make every organization record there what is their important, what is their dependency, what are the applications, what is the recovery time, dependencies. But then how on earth will a team of 1 or 2 people will collate information out of this 2,000 documents and put it into a meaningful report and give it to you? Now, to do that, you would probably need 2 extra people. So a lot of organizations have failed in business continuity management when they do it manually, because the information is gathered in templates and nobody reads or analyzes it. This is where automation is there. The moment you collect how to deal with data, BCM has so much of data, so much of meaningful report to it. The moment you start using that data to improve on business resilience, to improve on your services, to improve on the efficiency, and making that information available in time is key to making it successful. Else, it just becomes a tick box exercise with most of the organization do it for compliance because the regulators mandate it. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, and
Thank you, Sajid.
to add, thank you. And I actually have a question in reverse for both Kundan and Sashi after my point. So when it does come down to, I guess, answering this question from my perspective, we have to look at, so from a foundational perspective, why would we even start a business continuity program? Yes, from one pillar, you have the regulatory aspect that's driving the need. And then how the practitioner manages the program. Rather, of course, it'd be just documentation, engaging stakeholders, getting their input on certain documentation. Yes, you can run it that way. Of course, you need to adhere to regulations. You need to adhere to your boards and committees that you're presenting your documentation to, because it is important. But of course, just make sure you do the exercises to validate all of the work that you are doing. And the second pillar that you have to think about is drive value. So as an example, if I'm conducting a business impact analysis for a specific business unit, you have to create an experience for whoever it is that you're speaking to get the information that you need, whether it be the business owner, the IT team, the facilities team, or the executive, whoever it is that you're interviewing, in order to get information to complete a more robust business impact analysis. And how you drive value through that is, yes, create an experience of what you think you would expect, or first of all, what kind of questions you would need to ask in order to get the information you need. But secondly, how do you invoke change from the information that you get and what you document? So if I assess 30 different processes that are assigned to one specific business unit, I have to understand what the inherent risks are. I have to understand what the recovery time objectives are and how it's aligned to the recovery point objectives. And then being able to create a unique story that speaks to, well, if this were to go down, then X, Y, and Z happens. But at the same time, what do we do with X, Y, and Z? How do we implement the actual change within the organization to make it more quote unquote resilient? Are there opportunities to automate certain processes? Are there opportunities to fund educational programs for employees so that they learn and understand how to best not necessarily position themselves to recover the business, but in the event that an opportunity comes up within another department, or that department specifically has implemented more automation, so there's less requirements for staff, how do we get the right people educated and maybe moved on to different roles? So it's really, yes, there's a regulatory driver, but then you also have to think of, and I don't want to repeat the word, but how do you drive value from actually invoking change from your business continuity program? And I think operational resilience is going to be a framework that most organizations are slowly learning about and adapting. And you're going to see a lot more changes actually coming out of business continuity practitioners. And that will eventually evolve into a more holistic, all-encompassing risk management. I don't want to call it risk management program, but operational resilience that encompasses business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management, risk management, and so forth. basically you want to cover the entire spectrum of all the risks that the organization could be faced with and best position your organization through change to be better available to respond, recover, and restore all your operations. So then on the flip side was the question that I was going to ask to Kundan was, so what tricks make an effective business continuity management plan or program? I know you got one.
I think you did touch upon the whole operational resilience piece, which is encompassing everything else, and that has got a layer or a backbone of technology, underlying technology into it. I think the biggest industry challenge has been getting the insights, as Sajid touched upon, the analytics. It's something that as an organization, if the organization get to know that something is going to happen or go wrong, first of all, do we even know what could go wrong? If yes, are we prepared? Everything that we've been talked about here. So now is the time when organization has realized that we can't live in a state of ad hocism, going into that situation and landing up and not knowing what are we going to do, even as leaders, as C-level people who are either not prepared. If they are prepared, it's not rehearsed. If it is rehearsed, it is really not realistic, because those plans that are in place won't work. Because they've been done in a DNA age, in some Word, PDF, some sort of a documentation. So the underlying principle of technology is just not an adoption of a technology insights to it. It's knowing what is happening in the organization. There's the whole CRM system data, there's an ERP system, there's a financial system. So each organization has some basic elements of data that they have, including an IT application. IT is no more industry now. It is part and parcel of every organization. Within organization, you have IT applications, you have their servers, you have your cloud now these days. So the amount of threat and risk that you talk about are enormous. Do we even know what those risks are? So this is where the play or around the automation comes into the play. And something very important that you asked was, even if organizations today want to adopt and have an effective business continuity plan, they cannot, because first of all, they will have to take a absolutely transformational journey in making that happen. And for that to happen, you have to have robust systems which are going to talk to each other, seamless information flowing between the system. It's not about doing a BIA. BIA is something that over the years, in the years to come, we will see that it is something that you should have by default. How you do that, whether it's getting an intelligence based on some AI, machine learning, is already a different concept. But this whole concept of business continuity management, integrating that with the crisis management, having a robust IT disaster recovery, and of course, a collaborative communication strategy on top of it, is the mechanics. You call it as resilience management. And that's a technology play that we are talking about, which is going to make a BCM program far more effective than what it is today. So adoption of technology, but not leading into adoption happening over a year or 2 years. It should be quick. It has to be disruptive. It has to, if today an organization want to go into having an automation, they should be able to do it in a couple of, if not months, weeks at least. It cannot run into a couple of quarters or a year. And that's an industry challenge that's going out in today's time. I hope that kind of sums up to the question, and maybe get a Shashi's perspective and Pushkar, Sajid's perspective on the same.
Definitely.
Very quickly, just to add one thing, I think one of the biggest learnings that you get for building your strategy and plan is the historic data. It still continues to be historic data. How do you get that information? You have various systems, you have various manual Excels, and to get that information and being able to track and have that information at the right time when you're doing an analysis, review, or during crisis is a very key element. And this is where technology helps in bringing those integrations where people do not have to feed that information and track them. I think that is what the key is. Having the information, if organizations want to have resilience meaningful, I think they need some sort of a technology involvement in it, which will bring all this information, do all this analysis, and be able to improve on their maturity. Believe me, with this way, they will not just improve on the BCMS maturity, but also the efficiency, and would be a very cost-effective way of doing it. A lot of our customers are testimonial to that, and we're happy to support people in actually implementing that.
Right. While we should start inviting some questions from attendees, please feel free to drop a line, post a question if you have any. In the meanwhile, I'll probably, be a little bit more experimentative here, touching upon what's happening in Asia. We're talking about India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and sort of a market segment, which is rather quickly adopting both technology as well as the way things are changing. Martin, your experience of the sea change that you see on this side of the world, compared to North America, how do you feel about it? Is subject being taken seriously? You see more people, more practitioners, or there's more depth in here? There's a lot of opportunities. So just a general feeling of, the continuity management preparedness. Is subject being taken seriously, or what's your general feeler about it?
Yeah, I think from my previous note about the two pillars of thinking about what is important for practitioners. Yes, you can have the regulatory aspect and then you have the drive value aspect of things, but regulations now, especially in a post-COVID world, there is so much impact to small businesses, so much impact to organizations, and so much, aside from the impact that COVID had on the lives of so many, the financial ecosystems of the world, for that matter, we don't want that to happen again. And I'm seeing, from my experience in North America, a lot of regulatory changes that are being slowly implemented to address how do we make organizations more resilient. And me now being in Saudi Arabia right now and working with a local regulator, seeing how organizations align are incredibly important, and the rigor involved in making sure that organizations are aligned to those regulations is absolutely critical of nature, because the intention of the regulator is specifically to ensure the safeguard of that organization so it can continue doing the services to the people it serves. And I think that's we will be seeing a lot more of that, and I think that will help, yes, indirectly promote the practice. But I think there is a bright future for a lot of business continuity practitioners, a great career path, I guess, because at the same time, there are industry standards that are kind of, I don't want to call them govern our practice, but industry standards that are truly helping shape what it means to be a business continuity professional, a risk management professional, information security professional. And the neatest thing, I'm a living example of it, is you can do what you do anywhere in the world because we all speak the same language of resilience.
Perfect. Pushkar, Sashi, your thoughts. You talk to a lot of customers. You speak around the world. What are your general thoughts on the same question?
Well, during most of our calls with our customers, right, when they're exploring the solutions, so of course technology is an enabler, and somehow a lot of customers that we talk to, they have reservations whether this platform that we come up with, can it integrate with their systems? How will it bring all the data together, right? The ease of use of the platform itself, and the ability to platform, right? So just want to tell everybody through this platform, and that's what we keep doing that while we talk to our customers. Let's see, any platform, right, and especially ours, has the ability to not only do integrations with any of your core systems, but then any associated platform that you work with, right? Whether it is your crisis notification systems, your HR systems, your single sign-on, or any other, right? It can bring all of it on a single platform and thereby enabling your resilience journey further.
So especially for Middle Eastern clients that I work with, there are different levels of maturity that clients go after. As Pushkar said, some clients, our tool has integrated with Microsoft Teams, risk alerting platforms, weather alerting platforms, notification systems, of course. And some clients go with the basic business continuity implementation, one to come up to the first level of resilience and also to meet the central bank regulatory requirements. There are different packages also that are available that can cater to both the business resilience requirements as well as commercial requirements of the customer. It all depends on what are the goals for the organization. in terms of the resilience program itself.
Thank you, Shashi. Maybe we have a couple of minutes left, and Sajid,
I'll
take
just
up
add one thing. Yeah, I'll just
Sure,
add
go ahead.
one thing very quickly is, I think a lot of people have the willingness and the intent to implement business continuity. I think a lot of those organizations are struggling to effectively implement and use a business continuity solution, and that's why not getting the value of it. I'll tell you a very simplest of reasons why sometimes adoption is difficult. That is called local languages. A lot of people understand business continuity, but a lot of geographies, our customers are struggling with the language of adoption of business continuity. So, for example, the Middle Eastern clients, they need business continuity, but if you give them in Arabic, they are able to implement it and adopt it faster. You talk about our Japanese area, if you are able to give in those local languages, the adoption is easier. And secondly, understanding the local regulations. Each local regulations has certain requirements given their own geography and priorities. The basic rule is essential service, but to adopt that essential service on making it continuity and how to do it effectively with their cost, time, and the effort involved in it is something that is a lot of organizations are requesting help. And what people, if they are able to successfully do that, actually drives the best benefit out of it. If you just do it to meet the regulation requirements, actually it ends up costing them more just to do this tick box exercise. So please do that business continuity for the right reasons. And we, given the experience that we had across things, we have taken care of small things, having our methodologies to the local requirements, giving them the business continuity in the local language. These are all the key elements, the simplest of design, the ability to speak in layman's language for business continuity requirements to different roles in the organization. I think those are the keys to implement it effectively and drive all the benefit of it. I think the smaller things actually make the biggest difference.
Absolutely,
Right.
Sajid.
And Sajid, maybe Pushkar, how do you justify the ROI or maybe even customers? Because today BCM is no more good to have. It has become a must-have. When you say BCM, more resilience management, its organizations have no choice but to do it, or because wherever there's better governance, wherever there's regulation involved, large customers involved, or essential services, you may call it, whether it's the hospitality, the healthcare sector involving hospitals, chains, and all of that. Talk about airlines, telecommunication, banking, financial, most of the essential services. You've got to have some sort of a resilience built in. What kind of conversations do you have with customers around the ROI? How do you justify the cost and this and that? Maybe a few liners on those, including yourself.
Sure. So one of the examples I'll quote, sorry, Sajid.
Good.
So the recent Bangalore situation, right? Like one of our existing customers. So when we were setting up this auto BCM for them, and they did not opt for emergency notification services, right? And they have some 24,000 people, right? On that particular day, their people were out and trying to get to work. Of course, they could not, and they were stuck. And the organization had no means of communicating to them that, okay, guys, don't come to office today, work from home, right? We, of course, stepped in and we offered them assistance, made those notification services available to all those 24,000 employees. Imagine had they gone ahead with this implementation, right from the beginning, just the amount of time they would have saved, right, for all these people working from home, right, instead of being stuck out in the rains or traffic. That you don't need any further argument on ROI.
We have a question from a gentleman here, whether auto BCM cyclable to ensure and provide BCM resilience assurance to management on continuous basis throughout the year. Maybe Sajid, you may want to take this up. Yes.
Absolutely.
Sure,
Absolutely. 100%. First of all, if you look at auto BCM, now that we were talking about auto BCM, it comes in deployment agnostic, deployed wherever you want it. If you're trying to plan for a business continuity, put it on the cloud, and we have local clouds available. So the services of auto BCM will be available even if your own systems are down. Secondly, business continuity assurance, when you talk about it, the solution actually identifies all the gaps that would be there in your planning while you're making the plans itself. Third,
Sajid,
yes,
continuity of the question would be how to ensure continuous BCM resilience, how BCM dashboard works with any benchmark parameters and controls?
So let me tell you very simple. The templates are designed to help you get the certification of ISO 3301. Very importantly, Pushkar talked about a clause called 8.4.5, which was written to BAU. Our template has a dedicated section for it. When you talk about the latest standards of 2019 ISO, it talks about solution. Our software already talks about solution, because strategy is just about recovery. Solution is about mitigating, transferring, doing any reactive. So while we have gained our experience across domains, industries, we can assure you that your effective business continuity management practices and maturity up to level 4 through a solution itself. In the maturity of 1 to 5, the only element that a solution will not cover is the leadership commitment. That is something that we would want them to have it. Other than that, the solution can do it. And continuing on your first question, why not ROI? Now tell me one thing. First of all, it's a mandated requirement, so you'll have to do it. Secondly, why would you spend more in doing a BCM which is manual, where you could do the same at half the cost on the automation? Third, why would you do manual when you get all the gaps and you cannot identify the gaps and all the human errors, where those could be avoided in the automation? Third, why would you do a manual BCMS when your downtime will increase by 2 to 3 hours at every incident? An organization having 2 to 3 hours of downtime, calculate the cost of that and calculate that a fraction of that cost for implementing BCM. You look at from whichever sense. There is no reason why not to adopt automation. Today, all the business operations are automated. You missing out doing that on BCMS is only increasing your cost and efficiency. That's my simple message.
Correct.
Thank you.
And also, I think in absence of an automated BCM, you're probably doing, planning for so many more applications than you need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Venkat, team would be happy to engage on having a conversation with you and get you more information, but thank you for posing lovely questions. It was great having you all as peers, panelists. Very informative session. Thank you everyone who joined on this one. Look forward to having more of industry conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good day.